to make room for bond projects to be built. After that, safety and financial concerns caused the zoo to focus on the on-campus only train loop. So many of us have memories that were made in that full loop. I myself can think back fondly to being on that train, the full loop, and I wasn't even born and raised here. So I went there and experienced it as an adult. So many children, generations have been through Washington Park and perhaps experienced their first train ride on that full loop. My intention with the budget note was to convene a group of stakeholders that would consider the opportunities and challenges of restarting the full Washington Park loop. I wanted the task force that was seated to make recommendations regarding future feasibility and funding scenarios, possible impacts to the zoo and other investments, and explore the Washington Park loop as a tourist attraction and as a source of revenue generation. None of these topics turned out to be easy. As much as the long loop was an iconic attraction for visitors and residents alike, there are many challenges that make restarting it harder than anticipated. Funding for uncertainties over the long-term operations and maintenance, safety, including deferred track and train maintenance, and the not insignificant reality of Washington Park, the tracks and trains being owned by the city of Portland and not Metro. This is yet another kind of P5 question. Our discussions are also included concerns from the other cultural organizations and groups that operate in Washington Park and the constraints they experience regarding transportation, parking, and their investment into the last Washington Park master plan that was updated in 2018 before any of us here at Metro Council were in our current roles. Still, I'm pleased with the outcome of the task force, and I'm grateful that this group engaged with each other in earnest through creativity, and they really disagreed respectfully when there was disagreement. In the end, we came up with a plan that was unanimously endorsed, and the findings have laid out part of today's packet, but also basically a library of files that we can draw on into the future. The task force report and the COO's recommendation set the stage for next steps on this project beyond what I had hoped, and make it clear that while the mission and vision of the Oregon Zoo is not to put all of its effort alone into operating the Washington Park Loop, we can look for partners, including the city of Portland, so that Metro can continue to be involved in the conversations about the future of this project. We will be able to commit funds if conditions are met and other funds are raised. And the COO recommendation will further describe how our money can incentivize multi-jurisdiction, public-private foundation investment into this treasure. Thank you to everyone who served on the task force, and most especially to my co-chair from City of Portland, Deputy President Olivia Clark.
Wow, that's right. Sorry.
Yes. And now I think I turn it over to you to say a few words also of introduction.
Thank you so much, Councilor Lewis and Clark.
There you go.
I really appreciate I appreciate the invitation to be here today. It's really great to be back in this room. I spent a lot of time in this room, different configuration, JPAC meetings for years. So it's kind of fun to be here. I really like this configuration.
It's new. It's in trial period.
Oh, it's excellent. I especially really want to thank my colleague, Councilor Lewis, for her dedication, her leadership, her perseverance on this topic. On the Washington Park Zoo Railway. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for her and for all of you, frankly. So thank you so much. I will just an aside, funny, I was telling a few of you this morning, I was on a phone call with my best friend who lives in Vienna, Austria. And she said, what are you doing today? And I said, oh, I'm going to talk about the Washington Park Zoo train. And she said, are you going to sing the Paul Simon song? It's all happening at the zoo. And I said, no, I think we may have a generational issue here with that song. I'm sure the zoo director knows the song, though. I especially want to thank the Washington Park Zoo and Railway Task Force members, some of whom are here today, for all the time they spent discussing, debating, and digging in on really difficult topics to pursue what we affectionately call the zoo train. And we also had lots of other rail experts who came to talk to us and to provide their expertise, especially from the Oregon Rail Heritage Center. So thank you for helping us. These folks delivered to you a unanimous recommendation that Metro and the City of Portland move ahead and take the next step towards moving from concept to implementation. There's clearly more work to be done, but this is a really important step forward. And as Councilor Lewis mentioned, the zoo train really lives in the heart of so many people in Portland and in the region. We have so many memories, family memories, kids' memories. It's been a part of so many people's growing up that it's really iconic. And because of that, I'm really confident that there's so much public support that we can continue with a public-private partnership. And from my perspective, at the City of Portland, public-private partnerships are really the future for us in making things happen, especially outside of government. That's how the zoo train started 50 years ago, was a public-private partnership. And in fact, that's how we're taking care of the Hoyt Arboretum. It's how the Oregon Rail Heritage Center operates. It's the Portland Streetcar. And most recently, it's the Selwood Community Center, which I was intimately involved in. Those are just a few examples of public-private partnerships. So I'm very confident about that. I also want to express my appreciation to COO Madrigal, who is not here today, for her recommendation to you today to keep this effort going with your support and support from Portland Mayor Keith Wilson. I love trains. I loved trains before I worked at TriMet. And I think that that appreciation is shared by so many people. I have also a lot of enthusiasm for the future of Washington Park, this is an intimate part of that future with the Japanese garden, the Rose Garden, the Reservoir Project now. So colleagues, this is really, and the opportunity is here to move forward and the community is ready. And I really appreciate your time today and your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for stepping up so quickly into your first term to do this. I really appreciated it. I'm going to invite to the podium Ina Zucker, who will give the presentation on the COO recommendation. Morning, Ina.
Good morning. Thank you, counselors, and for that introduction. And I'm pleased to present the task force report today, along with the COO's recommendation on behalf of COO Madrigal. Her recommendation has two parts. First, she recommends that the Metro Council endorse the findings of the task report as laid out in their report. And also and then the second part of her recommendation is that Metro reserves some funds in contingency for 2 fiscal years to support necessary technical work that would be an important first step for restarting this project. For the first part of her recommendation, she supports the task force finding that conversations should continue between the City of Portland, Metro, and other interested parties to reconsider the IGA that currently exists for train operations. This is especially important if other parties, like Friends of the Washington Park and Zoo Railway, are interested in assuming operational control of a future Washington Park loop. COO Madrigal agrees with the task force that future discussions should include how to find funding for planning level work, where future operations and maintenance responsibilities lie, whether environmental, logistical, and regulatory constraints include appropriate levels of risk for stakeholders, learning from other train consortiums, as Councilor Clark mentioned, regarding ownership structures, and consideration of the need for peer or independent review of materials and additional studies based on parties involved in the future of this project. To signal Metro's willingness to stay involved in future conversations, she's also recommending that Metro continue to be involved financially in the pre-work that the task force mentioned. And the pre-work would need to be funded and completed before any entity could restart the Washington Park Loop. The first technical study should be a comprehensive geotechnical assessment to ensure that if a train runs again on the Washington Park Loop, that it is safe. That assessment should include subsurface investigation, quantitative slope stability analysis, and updated hazard mapping along the full loop. The geotechnical assessment is currently expected to cost approximately $250,000. If $200,000 is raised by other parties to complete the study, Metro will match that with another $50,000, and those Metro funds will be available for the next 2 fiscal years. That's the COO's recommendation on the task force report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Counselors, any questions?
Madam Chair.
Councilor Nolan, then Councilor Rosenthal.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you for being here and thank you for presenting that. The recommendation is just to proceed with a geotechnical study. Did the task force talk about when it would do a financial feasibility study? Because a lot of things are geotechnically feasible, but they are very expensive to implement. I want to make sure we're keeping track of that so that we are scaling anything we move forward with to a true enterprise fund operation, not something that would compete with other programs for very, very limited general fund dollars.
Counselor,
So help me get over this concern.
Counselor, that's a great question. And I think just to start off with, I think it has frustrated many advocates that the zoo train budget isn't run as an enterprise fund within the enterprise fund. So it's not fully pull-outable all of the numbers. But what the task force was able to distinguish between is the necessary capital type money and the foundational work that's going to be needed for construction, but also for ongoing kind of capital improvement versus just the operations. There was some sophisticated discussion towards the end of the task force about the operations cost of the short route versus the long. And there was general consensus that it's almost negligible, particularly because of the seasonality differences. You don't run the full length all year long, and you do it when you have the highest peak of visitors in spring and summer. Historically, that's how it's been done. And so if you're already paying somebody to drive the train in a circle, it just depends on the size of the circle, and you dial up the number of visitors, you can dial up your number of long loop rides. Councilor Clark, is that a fair reflection?
Absolutely. Thank you. Councilor Nolan, that's a great question. I really appreciate your asking that. We all have general fund issues. We top to bottom, we all do. So I appreciate that. I'm confident we'll raise the matching funds for the 50,000. But in the long run, I think you're right. We're going to have a feasibility study. The zoo did a great job in presenting to the task force a step-by-step approach to this. We didn't dig into the financial feasibility, but they provided a really great sort of outline for how we would proceed.
It doesn't surprise me that you have covered this, but I just wanted to make sure the record showed that we are mindful of the potential financial responsibility someone might have to take on if we proceed. Thanks for the work.
Thank you.
Councilor Rosenthal and then Wong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two questions. One question probably is probably premature is what did they recommend in terms of, or what it's going to cost to evaluate the change from diesel to electric? But my question is really about the geotechnical. Do you have a preliminary idea of the geotechnical evaluations? In other words, borings, use of the tunnel, all the geology that was developed during the tunnel, LiDAR mapping and so forth. I mean, coming up with a 250,000 estimate is probably reasonable, but I'm just wondering if you had, and if somebody identified a preliminary, sort of basic things that are going to be looked at.
Well, Counselor, great question. We did have testimony before the task force from technical experts about that. In fact, some of them are in the room. I think that some geotech work had already been done, but it needs to be updated. So I'm confident that they'll be able to scope that in the way that you're suggesting, but we don't have that now.
Okay.
And Counselor, to your question regarding electrification, not to overuse the metaphor, I think electrification might be on its own track because there is some possibility of funds for electrification at the zoo, helping support electrification of the train. Because remember, electrification at the zoo campus writ large is part of our bond priority list. And I don't know if it'd be appropriate to ask somebody else who might be deeper in that to further answer that or come back to the future.
That's enough for now.
Can I just add that I thought there was a considerable enthusiasm for that among the task force?
I'd say unanimous enthusiasm for electrification.
Great, thank you. Councilor Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, and thank you all for serving on this committee. It's what our local governments do best, is creating committees and thinking through tough questions. And I think my question is actually pretty straightforward. So you're saying you could do a short loop and a long loop? And how would that impact our Zoo Lights programming? Was just did such a wonderful job on Zoo Lights, and then when I was there was a queue that was multiple blocks long for a train. Does that impact how we might run that if it's longer? And yeah, like, I guess, what are the financial impacts for Zoo Lights if this were to go forward?
Counselor, that's a great question, because as you know, Zoo Lights is one of our most important
That's right.
winter revenue generators. And the opportunity to run the long loop really is for the spring and summer, and doesn't preclude us from doing the short route.
Can I just add something to that? I think that your experience, Counselor, just demonstrates how popular this is, and how much more popular it will become. But I don't think it will interfere. In fact, it would enhance Zoo Lights. I know that when I took my grandson last time on the short loop, which exists now, he was sort of disappointed, like, oh, that was only 6 minutes. It was so short. But there's so much enthusiasm, and I think you saw that demonstrated.
Well, I'm supportive of a CO recommendation. I think that makes a lot of sense to continue a study. Thank you.
Great. Councilor Gonzalez?
Thanks, President Peterson. I just want to take a quick moment to thank folks for doing this work. The Lewis and Clark partnership is also, I just connected those dots as well as you said that, Councilor Clark, so I appreciate that. You know, before I was ever involved with Metro or ran for Metro Council, I hadn't known about the Zoo Train. I mean, it's my family didn't get to participate or enjoy it at that time. But like learning about the incredible passion that people in this region have for this treasure that could kind of reemerge for this generation and the next is really special. So I want to thank Councilor Lewis a lot, because you found the resources and brought Metro to the table to really host this conversation in partnership with some incredible leaders. So I think that's wonderful. I appreciate Marisa and the COO for helping to land the plane on such a major, complicated project that has so many different phases and elements, and I think gets us one step closer to answering the next questions that we need to answer. So, you know, to the point that Councilor Wong mentioned around committees and doing work, I mean, I think it's really great that we're able to surface, and our next step is to take the next one. And then after that, we'll take the next one, keep making progress. And I think government works best when communities are able to use their public institutions, their public governments to make things happen that benefit all of us. So I just want to thank y'all for that. And I know that there will be a cost impact, certainly, and we to learn more about what that is. But you know, I'm committed to being a good partner and trying to find a path to yes. So thank you.
Great. You know, their hands raised. I just want to say thank you to both Councilor Lewis and Deputy Council President Olivia Clark. There is always a tension between trying to build new and trying to keep what we have, especially something as special as this. And Councilor Lewis, you have done that so well from your seat on behalf of this region, whether it was in your district or not. So I just want to acknowledge the ability that we all have to hang on to some of the past while moving forward. And I really appreciate your ability to do that. So thank you. And again, for coming on in your first term and making this a priority. Something you probably didn't think that you were going to get thrown into, but much appreciated. And I'm obviously very supportive of moving forward and kind of thinking about how do we get to that P4, right, with philanthropy. because I think that there is a latent demand to help bring this back. That it's not going to be a generating multi-million-dollar generation of cash flow to the zoo, but there are a lot of people that I think would like to see this back up and running and put some money into it. And we do have so many friends of the zoo that I cannot thank them enough either. And just reminding everybody of what happened during COVID when we had to shut down the zoo, and the Zoo Foundation raised $2.5 million in 2 weeks to be able to feed the animals and keep the zookeepers. So our community around the zoo is very committed, and I think that they will rise to this occasion. So I'm looking forward to that. Council, do I see nodding heads, thumbs up of moving the recommendation forward? Look at that. All right. I thought you wanted to electrify it.
Let's get this thing.
The steam engine will go away. Anyway, that's how nerdy we can be. Thank you. Much appreciated. Looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And thank you, Ina, for all of your hard work in organizing us to this point. Yes. All right, we're going to move on to our next presentation. It's an update on the Supportive Housing Services Regional Policy and Oversight Committee. When we gave formal direction to create this new committee, Council wanted to consolidate the 2 existing oversight committees, encourage greater participation among local governments, and ensure that the new structure is both efficient for committee members and delivers better outcomes for the region. We also asked staff to bring back to us a proposal for subcommittees where expertise in specific areas could be shared, debated, and filtered up to the primary committee. To update us on that progress, we have Liam Frost here with us to give a presentation, an update. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilors, it's good to be here this morning. For the record, my name is Liam Frost. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am currently serving as the Interim Director of Housing here at Metro. And as President Peterson mentioned, I'm here to provide an update. Spoiler alert, we do not have a proposal right now, but I want to share with you some considerations that I'd like for you all to digest and provide us with ongoing feedback as we return to this space, as well as to our one-on-one conversations with you in the course of the next few weeks. As President Peterson mentioned, you council passed a series of reforms at the end of December last year, and our staff are hard at work on implementing and planning and coordinating with the county staff to make sure that we follow through in the work plan that we committed to, that you approved. Just to remind you, the 5 major buckets of reforms were a consolidation of the 2 oversight committees, a new framework for regional investments, new KPIs, key performance indicators, 5-year goals, a new dashboard to make it more accessible, it being information, key information for the public and for stakeholders, and then new regional programmatic standards through administrative rules to ensure consistency of services throughout the region. We are moving fast to meet the aggressive timelines of that work plan. The recruitment for the committee is still open. It closes next Tuesday on February 9th. So if you know folks who either are interested or should be interested, please reach out to those people right now and have them submit an application. I can report back that our work with our county counterparts is going well so far. I think they understand the mission and are working with us to achieve that. We are prioritizing space, time, and capacity for this work so that there are no delays on launching this committee in April. Some of the key pieces that do require coordination with the counties are that framework for the regional investment plan fund, and then also onboarding for the committee members. I think Councilor Lewis knows intimately that the onboarding process for these kinds of committees is especially important around homelessness and housing, given the experience of the Tri-County Planning Body and the Oversight Committee. In consolidating the 2 committees, the new committee is inheriting the responsibilities that were the responsibility of the Oversight Committee and the Tri-County Planning Body. That's a lot of responsibilities for one committee. In addition, we are prioritizing some other major issues, including developing criteria for stability, criteria for successful exit strategies, defining success for each population, individualized plans for success for every participant in the system, and so on. So we're adding things for this committee to weigh in on and recommend then to council in this new concurrence model. We also know that there is consideration of additional pieces that I know that Councilor Wong is considering, Councilor Gonzalez is considering right now. So at this time, we've been planning under the assumption that this new committee would meet at least once a month. In the ordinance that you approved, it was at least once every 3 months. But in onboarding, launching this committee and making sure that it gets going right off the bat, we're contemplating potentially even more frequent meetings than once a month or longer meetings. Now, with elected officials, that becomes very, very difficult to do. That's where the idea of a subcommittee really could play a strong role. In addition to a subcommittee, which is defined as literally a sub version of the committee. So committee members, a smaller number of committee members, would help move that work along in an accelerated way, which I know we all want to prioritize. Additionally, we've heard from coalitions on the outside who believe in this work that having a work group of additional members should also help. I personally don't think we're at a point right now to contemplate that, but I do think the contemplation of a subcommittee should be considered as to whether it can accelerate this work or not. I want to go back to that piece that a large portion of this committee is elected officials, and therefore we want to be able to make sure that all these major issues that council wants to sink its teeth into, that our regional partners want to sink its teeth into, can actually be digested by this committee and processed through this committee to bring to Metro Council and make decisions. That's where we're at as a staff right now. We really want to get this right. We will return to this space with proposals for you to consider and approve. And that's my update for today. I'm open to any questions, any suggestions to keep the ball moving.
Councilor Lewis.
Thank you so much for coming before us, even though you don't have anything for us to start poking holes at. I just wanted you to speak a little bit more specifically. When you say subcommittee, are we really thinking a representational sub, which still kind of spreads the membership of that group across the different types of seats and perspectives? Are we open to the ex officio members joining that? And then I would also say that I've heard the idea of an executive committee. And are you conflating the idea of an executive committee, which in one capacity does the planning, the pre and the post work, and can give staff direction in immediate real time, but also in some places gets used in decision-making capacity in lieu of the large group. And I don't believe that's what we had anticipated in paneling this full group.
Thank you for the comments and the question. Our contemplation so far within the department has been considerate of scope. So if there are specific technical issues, we would want representation from the committee that could speak to those technical issues and bring them back. Now, the options we want to bring back to you, we'll provide you with a series of options, and we'll also provide a recommendation as well. But then we're into the push and pull of, well, what does council want from these subcommittees? What will the 3 councillors who are on this committee want from the subcommittee, executive committee? I don't want to push it too far at this point. I really want to right size our planning, our launch. But to answer your question directly, we're really considering within the scope of what potential subcommittees might take on. To be more specific, let's say population A, population B considerations around funding. Who would be the best representation from the main committee on that subcommittee? I know that Councilor Wong in the past has brought up reallocation of resources. What would a subcommittee look like in that regard? We can only go so far and then hand it over to council to provide us direction, but we're doing that work right now.
So you're talking topic-specific technical advisory, but not attack?
Thus far, no, unless otherwise directed.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Wong.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And I guess my question would be around sequencing. It seems like there would be a lot of value in having this type of subcommittee. But I'm wondering if it makes sense for us to seat the RPOC first and then ask them who do they want to advise them. Because I think we're going through a process of appointing members now. So
yeah,
wouldn't it make sense to sequence them rather than do them simultaneously?
I'm glad you brought up sequencing. For us, we want to get our arms around what the work looks like and then bring that to council and then the committee. If council would prefer us to go directly to the committee and ask for their recommendation, that's fine. But the priority for our department is to really understand and quantify the capacity needed, both in terms of staff time and committee time, to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible. So whether that's coming back to council and asking for that direction or going to the committee, that's for you to decide.
If I can just take a moment to remind us of why we're even talking about subcommittees. I think you tried, but I will do my best take and then maybe you can fill in. The change in membership is really driving this desire for those who might have had a seat at a table, who no longer have a seat at a table, to find a seat at a table. That would be my summary. So a lot of the providers who had direct access into this committee were feeling like they needed to have some place to be able to bring their concerns and have them heard and then funneled up. Those with lived experience who might not be on the committee, but we might want to check in to see, does this make sense, right? Would we have a subcommittee to do that? So I think that was really the impetus for the conversation starter of, because now it has a majority elected officials and several citizen members with some sort of background on the topic, but it's no longer a room of providers. So I think that's where the impetus came from. And I think what you're struggling with is, so what is the purpose? If you had a subcommittee of providers, what is their purpose? How would they meet? What questions would we be asking them? If we had people with lived experience on a committee, right? How would you use them to the most effective manner?
Exactly.
Okay. So when we're thinking about these things, I think it's more about how do we get perspectives in the room to answer specific questions from the committee, the main committee, right? Or from the staff through the committee, is how I would put it.
Yep. And the advice that we've received from OMA is to be very distinct between the definition of subcommittee and definition of work group. Subcommittee is a subcommittee. A work group we can bring in, or a task force even is considered in Metro Code. And it speaks to the definition that you just brought, President Peterson. I fully expect that at some point we are going to have to launch a work group, whether that's in the next 3 months, next 6 months, 9 months. I think it will be dictated by the amount of work that we quantify for the committee first, and then bring in so that that work group can provide value to the larger committee.
So for instance, KPIs, that's one of the biggest things coming forward, right? Is establishing the KPIs. How do you get input on those KPIs from these different perspectives?
Yep.
Councilor Nolan?
Thanks, Madam President. A couple of points. We've got 3 members of this council on the committee, and I trust them to figure out how to get technical, professional, lived experience, and community-based input. I don't see a lot of value in being so minutia level dictatorial to them about how they do that. But if the rest of the council thinks we need to do that, I won't object. I do have a second point, because Liam, you've said a couple of times, a subcommittee is, well, a subcommittee. I just want to be clear that a subcommittee is a smaller group of members of the committee. It does not include anyone who's not on the main committee.
Correct.
That's the work.
Thank you
group.
very much. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
That's
That is the advice we got from OMA.
Okay.
And I'm just going back to the impetus, the reason we're even having this conversation.
And I think council might end up approving, time-bound external work groups depending on the issue. So you could have a 9-month, 6-month work group that weighs in on KPIs and goals. And then the committee might approve that, and then that's the end of that work group. I mean, that is a possibility. You could have an ongoing in perpetuity work group as well.
And so I guess the question that Councilor Nolan's raising, if I can just bring it back, is because we have the ultimate say coming back to the Metro Council through this committee, its concurrence. If this new committee wants to establish a subcommittee, does it need Metro Council permission? And if they want to create a work group, is that different?
Council President Peterson, so we, the code limits the creation of subcommittees of our advisory committees to short-term work. So if a longer subcommittee structure were needed, then I think council approval would be required of that. The reason for doing so, I see Councilor Nolan and some others may be asking some questions. It partially has to do with sort of budget obligations. So those committees often are going to have requirements to meet as public meetings, and it's sort of your oversight role to have some opinion and input and opportunity to think about whether that number of subcommittees that's being recommended or requested is necessary for the committee's work. So I think that's how you can think of the reason why. I don't think it's to micromanage, but rather to have that oversight responsibility.
Potato, potato.
Well, so what I'm hearing is if the committee wanted to create its subcommittee and it had a short-term, very specific thing that it wanted to work on, it does not need to come back to Metro Council, but if they wanted to establish it in perpetuity as part of the chart of something, then it would have to come back to Metro Council.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Just one quick clarification. We won't, I'm not trying to parse words here, but we're not going to have a charter for this committee. Effectively the charter is in the code. So council has created this committee by code, and then there will be bylaws for the operations of that committee.
Gotcha, bylaws. Okay, thank you. Councilor Rosenthal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it's sort of interesting process. I mean, I think I've heard rumblings that a lot of the providers feel their interests are not fully represented on the current RPOC committee. It would seem these questions would be some of the first things that the RPOC would consider. I see there's two paths. One path is to have a subcommittee. Subcommittees can always invite people to participate and testify and so forth, but you could also set it up as a technical advisory committee. I'm assuming that if, let's say RPOC said, well, we really want a technical advisory committee with a broader representation, then that would have to come to us for authorization because it would be sort of a standalone committee in addition to the RPOC. But if it was a subcommittee and they just wanted to invite people to come and testify on an ad hoc basis or a temporary basis or an issue basis, that is something that they could basically do, as long as they have in their authorization the ability to establish subcommittees. Okay, I guess I don't see the hassle. I mean, I think in my view, elected officials and a lot of the providers have different viewpoints and represent different constituencies. Smaller constituencies more focused for the providers, larger constituencies more broad-based for the elected officials. And so I've always thought it's going to be an interesting mix to get them on the same committee voting on things. So I don't think we're going to have it perfect to start out with. And I think the RPOC is going to have to keep working with this as they move forward.
And I guess that would just be my following up on Councilor Rosenthal. You said the staff wanted to make it perfect, and I want to say you don't need to be 100% perfect.
Thank
We
you.
do need to try, and we do need to learn. I don't think there's failure in this space. I think it's just learning what works and what doesn't work. And I would highly encourage us not to get hung up on the perfect because we will never reach it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think we just need to say that out loud a lot. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Lewis.
Sure, I would just reflect that we might be overthinking things and the opportunity to just notice a separate meeting of the full body and to notice it saying that it's optional, just to like let members off the hook who can't meet for a second meeting that month, for instance. But the current committee, when they are busy, they meet 3 Mondays in a row for 2.5 hours each. Like, this is a lot of work. People signing up to do this are invested. So I don't know why we're contorting ourselves for the same body to meet more often. I think they have the drive and the ability to do it. And if they don't, they shouldn't be coming forward to be on the committee. The question being, do you then have the ability to bring other people who are not on the current committee into the venue with seat at the table? I think that's just in how you construct a meeting. Because again, I don't see this committee being empowered to take votes because they're advising to the degree that texture is more important than quantity. So I would be open to suggestions. I just think simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Not say we did something to streamline and decomplicate and then immediately start putting bells and whistles back on.
My observations have been along this process is that we in this room are used to a regional discussion. We have JPAC, we have MPAC, we have RWAC. We're used to this forum, but this topic at Metro at this level is new. And so there's a lot of angst about how things will work. And I think that's why this conversation. And when we adopted, we did specifically say, could we please consider subcommittees based on what we were hearing from folks? And I think it is that angst of, well, how does regionalization of this actually work? How do I get my voice? If it's not here where it was, then where is it? So thank you for the simplicity thought.
And if I may just add and hopefully, or potentially conclude, not hopefully. My main priority here is to respond to council direction and then the committee's direction in leading the housing department and to inform what capacity we have, getting our arms around the quantity of the work and reporting that back. I'll also add too that in my experience at the Tri-County Planning Body in particular, having those voices somewhere at the table that can weigh in on potential goals, for example, like the goals that we approved, which had X's, if you remember, are very time bound. So for example, the amount of time that someone spends in shelter, the amount of time that someone is contacted by an outreach worker before they're placed into housing. I think having those voices of the folks that work with people experiencing homelessness will be valuable for those kinds of discussions. So I just wanted to share some experience there. But again, my priority is to share with you our capacity and then receive your direction and go about executing your direction.
Councilor.
Thanks, Madam President. Very good point you've made there, Liam, about getting input from practitioners about the feasibility of policy or time deadlines that the committee might recommend. I hope that the committee is mindful enough to also seek input from people who haven't been doing it the way we've been doing it for 10, 20 years, which has delivered important life-saving services to some people, but hasn't redirected the arc of homelessness and comorbidity of other issues relating to disabilities and things. By which I mean to say, if we only listen to people who have been doing it a certain way, and they tell us, oh, you can't do something different, we will have failed our constituencies. We also need to find people whose professional or lived experiences can be translated into housing and services, even though it hasn't been directly in services to homeless people or building subsidized housing. That's what the voters, that's what the public, I think, is looking to us in this pivot, that we are making taking intentional actions to invite those voices to influence those advising us and ultimately us.
Yep. Good point. Anything else on this topic? All right, seeing none. Thank you. Thanks for the update.
Thank you,
Thanks for the
Councilor.
conversation. Getting so much closer to April.
April, yeah.
All right, we will move on to Chief Operating Officer Communication. Andrew.
Nothing today.
Nothing. Okay. Councilor Communication, I'm going to look to my colleagues. Is there anything from the conversation this morning about the legislative session that you might want to generically update the council on?
I think the big takeaway from that conversation was battery EPR had a very good first day out of the gate.
Perfect.
And that we are also optimistic about the ticketing bill,
Yep.
that's good.
And
And
hearing tomorrow.
yes, thanks. And the rest of it is still not even pencils on napkins.
Any other updates? Counselor Simpson?
Just really quick, I want to thank the Black Employee Resource Group for this morning's coffee happy hour for Black History Month. It was, and when I say the Black Employee Resource Group, I want to name Marissa Grass and Chanel Perry and every hand that went into planning the event. It was a really good morning. And we also have art up here on the second floor from a Metro venture with SEI called If We Could Talk. I encourage everybody to go by and check out the art and the poems that are along with them. It's really beautiful and touching. And happy to Black History Month.
Happy. Counselor Wong?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to update folks on the MPAC meeting from last week. And if Counselor Rosenthal and no one want to contribute as well, but I think the biggest point that I wanted to share was we had a lot of feedback on the industrial lands economic development bill. Numerous mayors from Washington County, as well as Mayor Joe Buck, asked us to support that bill. And I said I'd bring that back to council and that we're working through different iterations and considerations and a lot to think about, but wanted to make sure that council knew that that was the, I guess, ask from numerous members of MPAC.
Some members, yeah.
Some members, yes.
With some enthusiasm.
Yes.
Yes.
Anything else from MPAC? I think that was the biggest one. We had some great presentations on future vision and yeah, just really great engagement, but that was the main point I wanted to share. So thanks.
Good.
It was.
All right. Counselor Lewis, back to you.
Sure, counselors, I have drafted a letter, well, with the support of staff, in support of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde application for federal funds in transportation for extending Main Street through and into the Tumwater property that they now own in Oregon City. I would hope that it could be a full council letter. So please look for draft and approval because it's really important that we continue this partnership. Thank you. I'm good. You're good. We're good. Great. We're good.
Yeah, I don't see any.
Thank you.
Is that letter, can you send that letter out in draft?
I don't know. Staff are doing it because we don't want to have a miscommunication with serial meetings, but there's one circulating somehow.
Okay, I've not seen it, but
Okay.
I'll look for it.
Right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.